Okay. Thank you for that very generous introduction to the organizer of this forum with the theme Revisiting Philippine-China Bilateral Relation and Maritime Cooperation during President Rodrigo Duterte's era and its legacy, to my co-panelists in this forum, to our media friends and colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, a pleasant afternoon to all. In the area of foreign policy, President Rodrigo Duterte was successful in his independent foreign policy of being a friend to all, an enemy to none, which has benefited the country a lot, both economically, security-wise, and even amid the COVID-19 pandemic. Under the Duterte administration, independent foreign policy established on fostering a broader and differentiated set of relationships solely based on Philippine national interests, designed to maximize the country's autonomy, security, and prosperity. Duterte changed foreign policy considerably by reorienting the Philippines' diplomatic relation to a more friendly and constructive relations and engagement with China, as opposed to a more pro-United States stance, going against the antagonistic relationship towards China under the late President Benigno Aquino III's administration. President Duterte, during his term, introduced a rapprochement policy, or what you call the reestablishment of cordial and friendly relation towards China upon ascending to the office of the presidency in 2016. I think this is one of the legacies of his administration. Indeed, Duterte has spent almost 6 years repositioning the Philippines from a staunch pro-American stance toward a neutral one by pursuing an independent foreign policy, intending to find a geopolitical non-aligned position or a middle ground between the US and China, where the Philippines remains a friend of the former, but at the same time deepens its friendship and mutual understanding of the latter from an economic perspective to maximize national interests. Hence, the Philippines was indeed able to redefine its relationship with its most important partners like China and the US, by positioning itself to better advance its interests in an evolving, ever volatile, and tension-driven regional order. Under President Duterte, the Philippines has forged deeper, friendly, and cooperative relations with China on areas, issues, and matters where there already existed mutual understanding and where the two countries have no disputes or differences, such as economics and trade, science and technology, cultural exchanges, and people-to-people relations. At the same time, it tries to resolve its differences and conflict of interests with China, more specifically in the South China Sea, through diplomatic and peaceful means within the ambit of ASEAN. This foreign policy shift, to some extent, boasts the mutual understanding, trust, and confidence between the two nations, noting that China and the Philippines are close neighbors across the sea, sharing time-honored bonds of friendship. Indeed, the Philippines and China mutual understanding and cooperation have withstood the test of time. Despite differences over the disputed South China Sea, the cooperation between the Philippines and China in the areas of bilateral trade and economics, people-to-people relation, high-level exchanges, the synergy of the Build program of President Rodrigo Duterte with the Build and Road Initiative of China, anti-pandemic cooperation, and others have brought continuous tangible benefits to the peoples of both countries. During the 6 years under President Rodrigo Duterte's administration, China has become the Philippines' largest trading partner, the country's second largest source of foreign investment, the largest export market, and the largest source of imports for the Philippines today. Indeed, the economic and infrastructure cooperation between the two countries has grown significantly. But definitely, there's still a greater space for further partnership and cooperation to enhance two-way trade and investment, for China to continue the support for the Build program of the Philippines, for both countries to work closely to address the impact of climate change, and for both countries to carry on with the mutual support in the fight against the COVID-19 pandemic. At the regional level, under the Duterte presidency, both countries, the Philippines and China, support, reaffirms, and uphold the importance of ASEAN centrality in matters such as regional security architecture, regional order, and the power dynamics between external powers that have interest in the region, and the renewed commitment to bring peace, progress, and prosperity to the region, and the significance of the continuous discussion and the conclusion of the Code of Conduct on the South China Sea. Most importantly, under the Duterte administration, the Philippines and China agreed and stressed the need to exert all efforts to maintain peace, security, and stability in the South China Sea by exercising restraint, dissipating tensions, and working on a mutually agreeable framework for functional cooperation. This means that even if a dispute exists in the South China Sea among claimant states like the Philippines and China, both are committed to broadening the space for positive engagement, which embodies the dynamic and multidimensional relation between the Philippines and China. Under the Duterte presidency on maritime cooperation in the area of oil and gas exploration, the Philippines and China signed a memorandum of agreement, or MOA, on joint oil and gas exploration in the West Philippine Sea, more specifically in the Reed Bank, during the visit of Chinese President Xi Jinping in November 2018. The MOA states that the two countries have agreed to accelerate arrangement for joint exploration in maritime areas following international law. China has pledged to give the Philippines the more significant chunk, 60% of the planned joint project revenues. This agreement or this arrangement is consistent with Philippine laws, which mandates 60 to 40% sharing arrangement in revenues from utilizing the country's natural resources in favor of the Philippines. All these are testament to the deepening friendship and mutual understanding between the Philippines and China, and serve as a win-win compromise that will benefit both nations and their peoples. Furthermore, the bilateral ties and cooperation with the Philippines and China have gained further momentum and impetus with the inauguration last April 5, 2022 of the Binondo Intramuros Bridge and the recent telephone summit between the Philippine President Rodrigo Duterte and President Xi Jinping of the People's Republic of China. The recent telephone summit between the two presidents demonstrates the two countries' positive and constructive partnership, cooperation, and deepening friendship. Furthermore, under the Duterte presidency, the bilateral relations between the Philippines and China have been elevated to a comprehensive strategic cooperation, which signifies the two countries' cooperative, pragmatic, and friendly ties gaining momentum and vigor. Undoubtedly, Philippine-China relations have gained some new vitality under the Duterte administration. Indeed, the renaissance of the Philippines-China bilateral relation, despite existing differences, is one of the legacies of the Duterte administration that has yielded tangible and concrete benefits for both country and their peoples. On the sensitive issue of the disputed South China Sea, the Philippines and China should join hands to handle the South China Sea dispute properly. Filipinos and the Chinese people in general must take cognizance that the two countries' differences over the disputed waters of the South China Sea are just a tiny part of the bilateral relation of the Philippines and China. Both countries should focus on positive aspect that bilateral relation, which brings tangible economic benefits to both countries, while actively resolving its differences over the disputed waters of the South China Sea through peaceful means, diplomacy, and dialogue at all levels possible. The Philippines and China and the rest of the claimant states should actively seek and explore joint bilateral and multilateral cooperation and fishery management, environmental cooperation, and oil and gas joint development and exploration, among others, which are important economic issues that might trigger potential conflict if not addressed. All this might boast and trigger mutual trust and confidence between the two countries if given a chance, attention, and due consideration, which may serve as a win-win compromise that will not only benefit both the nations, but may trigger the resolution of dispute between the two countries over the disputed South China Sea. Likewise, under the ASEAN mechanism, the Philippines and China should actively call and push for the conclusion of the negotiation of the Code of Conduct in the South China Sea, and dialogue without the intervention of the United States and other countries not party to the dispute with a great deal of ingenuity, firm resolve, and political will. An ASEAN-China's Code of Conduct on the South China Sea will create new forms of commonality and cooperation among the parties through dialogue and negotiation. The COC is vital as it provides a framework of rules, principle, norms, and decision-making procedures for the management and resolution of the dispute among the claimant states over the South China Sea. It is a viable diplomatic mechanism as it can provide international rules-based order for the South China Sea. Indeed, the dispute over the South China Sea must be resolved by the claimant countries alone through bilateral relation and multilateralism within the ambit of ASEAN mechanism like the COC, because this is by far the most pragmatic and the viable avenue to the easing of tension over the disputed water that is accepted by all parties concerned. The process of building consensus may prove to be difficult, but that is not impossible, while confrontation on issues surrounding the disputed waters is indeed self-defeating. To note, China and ASEAN member states have reached an unequivocal consensus that they will work together to safeguard peace and stability in the South China Sea through dialogue and consultation based on consensus. The US and other countries not party to the dispute should refrain from intervening so as not to muddle and complicate the issues surrounding the South China Sea further. Likewise, China and claimant states like the Philippines, Vietnam, and others must take greater responsibility and behave constructively and responsibly as stakeholders. On another note, as important members of the Asia-Pacific region, the Philippines and China should remain strongly and firmly committed to an independent foreign policy, upholding the ASEAN centrality, which is centered on regional cooperation architecture while deepening the China-ASEAN Comprehensive Strategic Partnership. Both countries hopefully should further contribute to the stability and prosperity of the region. Ladies and gentlemen, friends and colleagues, thank you for your attention and good afternoon. Thank you.